Good morning, good morning. It is 6 o'clock a.m., a little bit later this morning, but it's a Sunday, so I generally just take it easy on Sundays, and I hit the gym whatever time I wake up, which is usually like 4 or 5 o'clock because I can't sleep any later than that because I wake up so early. But we're about to get into the story of the stroke, because I told y'all that we were going to talk about this stroke and what happened, right? So back in 2014, I had a tooth, a back molar that had gotten infected. As a matter of fact, right there, they had to pull it. That infection had moved to the floor of my mouth, under my tongue, and it was causing under my tongue to swell up rapidly. I went to the urgent care, and they said there was nothing that they could do. They didn't do any scans or anything. They just gave me some antibiotics and sent me on my way. A couple days later, the infection is continuing to get worse. So I go to one of the major hospitals that was in the Olympia area, which is where I lived. They got me in there. They did a CT scan of my neck and of my jaw and like the side of my head. And when he came back, he was like, I've never seen this before. We learned about it in school, but I've never seen it in person. And then asked me if it would be okay for him to bring his med students in. At that point, I was in such pain, I really didn't care. So I said, yes, go ahead. And so they came in and they were talking and stuff. And they had decided that they were going to send me with a respiratory team up to the only level 1 trauma center in Washington, which is Harborview in Seattle. So they sent me by ambulance up there. Once I got there, an oral facial surgeon ended up coming in and removing the tooth, and then also removing some of the bone in my jaw, and also cutting under my tongue in like 3 places to try and get the infection and swelling down. Of course, because of that concern, they were worried at the other hospital in Olympia that they did not have a doctor capable of doing a tracheotomy or comfortable with doing a tracheotomy. And their big concern was if they did not get the infection under control fast enough, that it would compromise my airway, and that would be a completely different issue. So I saw the oral-facial surgeon. She pulled the tooth, cleaned it, removed the bone and cut under the tongue, and then they put me on antibiotics. Of course, when they pulled the tooth, I went into shock. So they ended up having to give me pain medications, try and calm my system down. They admitted me, and I was there for a few days on IV antibiotics, and then I left on oral antibiotics. I want to say about maybe 5 or 6 days after getting home. Oh wait, we gotta rewind for a second. So during that time that I had to go up to the hospital and stay in the hospital, I had requested that somebody I knew watch my house and make sure that it was good, that there were no problems with my vehicles or anything like that. They had the house keys. My car keys were inside of the house. So needless to say, later on I found out that individual was quite the drug addict. So they came into my house while I was in the hospital. Of course, it was almost Christmas, so they wiped my house of all the electronics, flat screens, just moved everything out like I was moving out. And then they also took all of my sons. I had 3 sons at that time, and they took all of their Christmas presents. So I got them tablets and stuff like that. They took all of them. And yeah, so once I got home, I was still extremely sick, but I was on a mission to get my car back, because she had also taken the vehicles. One of them sent to the chop shop. The other one, she was driving it around and couldn't be located. In Washington State, if you give your keys to someone, even if they don't give the car back when you tell them to, at that point in time, you could not claim the car as stolen, because they look at it like you gave it to them. So I was doing what I could with the police, but they were saying that it had to be a certain amount of time before they could pursue charges, which I think was like a few more days. So in that time, as sick as I was, and as cold and rainy as it was, I hopped on the bus and got to the closest bus stop to her house, and then walked the rest of the way, which was quite a walk, and I was still quite sick at that time. She wasn't there, so it was raining. I walked back. I was on my way to the bus stop, and I saw a church, and I stopped there, and I spoke with the pastor, and the pastor asked me what was wrong, and I just broke down crying. I told him everything that was going on, and he asked if he could put me on the prayer list, and if he could take my information and give me his, to see how they could help me. And then he brought me back to my house, so I didn't have to walk. I believe at that time I probably looked extremely pale and extremely sick. And yeah, and I just didn't know yet. But I'll be right back to tell you guys the rest of it and tell you why I was so sick.